Son, grab your cowboy hat, dig out your Merle Haggard 8-track tapes, pop a top on a Cold Stroh's or a Mr. Pibb, and settle in. I'm taking you all the way back to the 1970s on this one. Where you put your cowboy boots on, your hat with a feathered band, and you loaded up the little woman and went to the Street Rod Nationals in Memphis, Tennessee. And when you get there, you're going to see lots of true spoke wheels with 3-bar knockoffs, resto rods with cow lights, hot rods with bumpers. It's the 70s, man. It was a magical time before things got overpriced and anybody could afford to build a hot rod, like this 1932 Ford body and frame for $175. You built your hot rod at home, in your dad's garage, using your dad's tools, even using his Craftsman table saw to make the wood parts you need. And parts weren't outrageously expensive either. Check out this reproduction 34 Ford grill for $38. If you didn't want to put a repop grill on your car, just head to your local swap meet. In the 1970s, they had stacks and stacks of originals. Maybe you didn't have the skills to build your own hot rod. You could buy this one all completely finished, this black lacquer 5-window for $3,500. When you got your hot rod all built, you might head down to your local Sears store for a car show in the parking lot. And of course, your ultimate goal was to get your car on the cover of a magazine. Street Rodder, Rod and Custom, Hot Rod Magazine, Carcraft. Magazines were king in the 70s. If you were lucky enough to get your car in a magazine, there's a good chance you had some type of candy paint job. Probably had some polished slots or maybe some Kragers with the white letters showing. Later in the 70s, true spokes, and then very late in the 70s, only black walls, no more white letters. Now here's a car that kind of covers all the styles of the 70s. Street rod, street machine, hot rod, drag car, Tom McMullen's Roadster. Notice the spoke wheels and white letter tires. This kind of gave me some inspiration when it came time to figure out a wheel tire combo for the Lady Luck coupe. A lot of guys that are famous in the hot rod hobby weren't famous yet in the 70s. This is Marcel Delay. This is way before American Hot Rod TV show and him making handmade bodies for Boyd Coddington. As a matter of fact, this is even before he branched out on his own to start Marcel's Custom Metal. This picture was taken in 1975 when he was still working at Brownie's Body Shop. Here's a couple of cars I know you guys are familiar with. Pete Shaporis's California Kid and Jake Jacobs' Coupe. Now, Pete and Jake weren't always famous hot rodders of the legendary kind from Pete and Jake's Hot Rod Parts. Back in the day, they were just hot rodders like you and me, building cars at home. Here's Pete with the California Kid long before it was the California Kid, long before it was in a movie, and long before it had that black lacquer paint with the killer flames. Now, Jake, he bought 3 coupes in preparation of building his famous yellow coupe. This is the one the famous 37 Ford narrowed truck grill came off of. Ultimately, Jake deemed this coupe too nice to chop and sold it to Mike Harper for $900, minus the grill, of course. Now, back in the 70s, guys weren't afraid to take their show cars to the drag strip. Here's Jake Jacobs at Irwindale Speedway. Now, there are some things that never change. Here's Bobby Alloway in the 70s, and what's he built? An all-black hot rod. Bet you wouldn't have guessed that. The only difference is this one has true spoke wheels, and he showed up wearing a cowboy hat to collect his award. Now, about this time, you're saying to yourself, hey, Puddin' Creek, the history lesson's pretty interesting, but I've drank a whole cup of coffee, and you hadn't told me anything about finding a Lady Luck coupe. Get on with it, Ham Hock. I couldn't agree with you more. I just wanted to get you in a right frame of mind, the 1970s, when this car was built. Here we go, buckle up. The year was 2021. We were at the Rod Run in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. If you've never been to the Rod Run in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, let me tell you about it. There's a long strip, a couple of 3 miles long, and there's cars lined up on both sides of the highway for sale or trade. Our favorite thing to do is walk this line of cars, usually around dusk when the sun's starting to go down and it's a little cooler, and check out all the cars for sale. As we walk along, I spy a car I've never seen before. I decide to pause and take a look at it. Out behind the car are 2 guys planted in lawn chairs, older guys, Looks like they'd been partaking of some adult beverages the whole weekend, having a real good time. One of them jumps up and tries to sell me the car. The other one jumps up and tries to talk up the little woman. Now, I can't get mad at him for talking up the little woman. She's so doggone pretty, I'd jump up and try to talk her up too. Now, while I'm getting a ear beating from car seller number 1, car seller number 2's talking up the little woman, and he asks her, "Hey, I've got all kinds of cars for sale. What kind of cars is your man looking to buy?" Well, she replies, he mostly likes 1930s cars. 1930s hot rods, to be specific. So seller number 2 comes running over to me and says, "Hey, buddy, would you be interested in a 1934 Ford?" And I say, "A 1934 Ford? I sure would." Step into my office. So he proceeds to tell me about this 34 Ford coupe that he just bought out of an estate down in Alabama. The car was put into storage in the 70s and had been there ever since until he pulled it out just a few days before. So as my mind's spinning with visions of what this 34 Ford could possibly look like, I ask him, "Do you have a picture of the car?" He replies, "I have a flip phone, so I don't have any pictures of it, but my son, I think, has one picture on his phone." He starts yelling for his son to come over. So his son finds this one blurry picture of the car on his phone. It's bright red, the grill's shiny chrome. That's all I need to see. I'm interested. I'm real interested. I asked seller number 2, "How much do you want for the car?" Without even hesitating, he said $30,000. Now, $30,000 might sound like a lot of money for a hot rod, but if you've been watching the channel very long, you'll remember it was about this time that we drove down to an estate auction in Georgia and tried to buy the Black Snake coupe. Now, as the name would suggest, the Black Snake coupe was filled with black snake skins. The frame was super rusty. It was going to require complete disassembly and restoration, and it sold for $40,000 with a 15% buyer's premium on top of that.
I sold it $40,000 on.
Also about this time, there was a big auction out in Montana that we had considered going to. They sold several 33 and 34 Fords, and we were really interested in this 3-window right here. We thought we might get a bargain on it. We ended up not going to the auction, but I want you to look at what it sold for. Yeah, you're reading that right. It sold for $48,000. I said $48,000. Maybe you didn't hear me. It sold for $48,000. So with all these crazy prices spinning around in my brain, I told the seller I was really interested in the car and asked him to get me some more pictures when he got home to Alabama. A couple of days later, my phone starts dinging, and sure enough, here comes the pictures of the car. And I mean, it is a 1970s time capsule. Just take a look. So I call the guy up and try to negotiate the price down a little bit. He cuts me off short. He says, "Hey, buddy, let me be honest with you. I'd been drinking all weekend when I threw that $30,000 price out at you." He said, "Furthermore, when I got home to take the pictures, I figured out that car's a lot nicer than I thought it was. It's covered up in chrome. It has a chrome drive shaft, chrome oil pan. All the window garnishes are chrome. That's a pretty nice car." He said, "I'm a man of my word. I told you I'd take $30,000 for the car, and I'll sell it to you for $30,000, but I won't take a penny less, and it won't hurt my feelings if you just leave it here in Alabama with me." I could tell by the tone of his voice, these negotiations are over. So I told him I'd take the car. I'm no fool. So bright and early the next morning, I hook up the car trailer and enlist the help of my little brother, and the two of us, we're Alabama bound. Now, if you've watched the channel very long, you know we usually pull these old cars out of barns and sheds and corn cribs and old service station buildings. But this one was in a really nice warehouse. This is the nicest place I've ever pulled a car out of. Now, the car didn't run, but it rolled and steered really easy, which is always a plus. What's this lettering on the rear fender? Lady Luck. Huh, the car's name's Lady Luck. That's pretty cool. The car is such a 70s time capsule that it has a set of Goodyear polyglass tires. When's the last time you saw a set of those? So we get Lady Luck tied down on the trailer, and we start the long trip home to East Tennessee. We make a couple of stops on the way back, one to fill up with fuel at a station out in front of a Piggly Wiggly market, and the other at a Cracker Barrel to eat everything that didn't eat us first. After staring at this thing in the rearview mirror all the way home, I couldn't wait to get it unloaded, get it off the trailer, look through it, look under it, just kind of really take in what we've actually found. As I'm unhooking the winch, the first thing I notice is this crazy pinstriping on the front cross member. It's just done with pinstripe tape. Doesn't match the really nice painted stripes that's on the body of the car, but that's no big deal. Pinstripe tape comes off pretty easy. I look under the backside and sure enough, more of that goofy pinstripe tape on the rear end housing. Certainly not done by the same guy that painted the stripes on the body and did the hand lettering. Two different guys for sure. As I get up off my knees, I notice the gas cap is engraved with the car's name, Lady Luck. Whoever built this car really wanted everybody to know what the name of the car was. Now, to find the original 1934 Greyhound hood ornament is a pretty cool find. Usually when you find them, the tip of the tail is broke off or one of the dog's legs are broke off. This one's in perfect condition. It's in such perfect condition that in the 70s, somebody made a sweater for it. Yeah, they made a sweater for it. I couldn't believe it either. And check out the styling on the sweater. I mean, it was made in the era of disco, so I guess it's pretty fitting. The insane thing about this car is all the chrome. The original grille's been beautifully re-chromed. The cowl vent's been chromed. You never see a cowl vent chromed on a 34 Ford. The windshield frame has been re-chromed. The window garnishes have been chromed beautifully. The ashtray cover's been chromed. The drive shaft's been chromed. The oil pan has been chromed. Lots of miscellaneous parts underneath are chromed. I'm guessing this guy had a buddy who owned a chrome shop. The next thing we're scratching our head about are the wheels on this car. Now they say Keystone on the center cap, and the design looks kind of familiar. I was a teenager in the 1980s, so I'm familiar with Keystone Classics, but these are not Keystone Classics. They're a different design that I've never seen before. With some internet work, we find out they're Rogues, Keystone Rogue wheels. They were kind of a precursor to Keystone Classics. Now, one of the first places I always inspect on a 34 Ford are the door bottoms. 34s are notorious for rotting out in the bottom of the doors. You usually find one of four conditions: either a hole in the bottom of the door that you can stick your hand in, or the hole's been filled full of Bondo, or a nice metal repair, which is rare, or the worst case scenario, a fiberglass cloth or a kitty hair repair. Those are always a nightmare. But these doors appear to be perfect. Even pecking on them, I can't hear any Bondo or filler. I think these are just nice original 34 Ford doors. Check out the ashtrays in the door pulls. You can tell this car was built in the 1970s. When we picked the car up in Alabama, little brother stuck his head in the window and said, "I'm pretty sure Herman Munster did the interior in this car." We still haven't figured out what kind of 1960s or 70s car these bucket seats came out of. My first guess was Vega, but I'm not really sure. If you recognize them, leave us a note in the comments. Now, when this car was built, there weren't too many reproduction parts floating around. These are original Ford Cobra emblems that the owner mounted on the filler panel above the windshield. Check out the stereo system. This is a really early cassette player made by Audio Research. I'm guessing this was kind of a high-end item back in the day. The old girl also has a whole dash full of Stewart Warner Stage 3 gauges. Now, I didn't remember these. I had to do a little internet homework to figure out what these were. When I was a teenager in the 1980s, VDO gauges were all the rage. Stewart Warners had kind of been forgotten about. Now, it's about this time in the video that you guys are saying to me, "Hey, Puddin' Creek, the Cobra snakes were pretty cool, the gauges and all, but we're hot rodders. Show us what's under the hood of that thing." Well, here you go. A 289 Ford motor with a tunnel ram and a 750 Holley double pumper. How you like them apples? This car even has the old school Mallory square-shaped Voltmaster coil with a Mallory flat-top distributor with push-in wires. Oh, and a beautiful set of Excel yellow spark plug wires. What else would you have on a 1970s hot rod? Now let's move around to the back of the car and check out the trunk area. You're not going to believe this. The guy that built this car must have been heavy into woodworking also. He did this fine craftsman-style trunk with a fire extinguisher and a first aid kit and even a set of Craftsman wrenches on the side in case you break down. Now, the very first thing we did was unbolt that wacky spare tire off the back. That's got to go. Now, don't it look a lot better already? Then we gave Lady Luck a real nice warm bath. We got her nice and clean and ready to push into the shop and get to work on. As we push it inside, check out these cool window decals from the 1970s. Does anybody remember Speed Equipment World? I sure don't. Leave us a note in the comments and tell us what it was. We get the car inside, pull the plugs out of it, squirt a little Marvel Mystery Oil in each cylinder, and let it set overnight. The next day, we drop the stainless steel gas tank. There's no rust in it because it's stainless steel, but it's full of varnish from 40-year-old fuel. So we fill it full of lacquer thinner. That lacquer thinner really breaks the varnish down, clean it right out, made it look like a brand new one, reinstalled it, ran all new fuel lines up to the double pumper, hit the switch for the electric fuel pump, filled the carburetor bowls up, and bam! All right, Lady Luck is a runner. Next thing on the list is to do the brakes. But before we do the brakes, we have to talk about the front end under this car. Now, long before you could open the Speedway Motors catalog and order yourself a Mustang II front suspension, there was this crappy little car that actually was called a Mustang II.
Ford introduces Mustang II. The right car at the right time. Because it's small, even smaller than the original Mustang, but built with jewel-like quality, unexpected luxury.
And long before guys were going to the junkyard to pull the whole front clip out from under these crappy little Mustangs, there was another car they used a front suspension out from under. That car was the Chevy Corvair. Before the Mustang II front suspension was all the rage for street rods, the original independent front suspension clip was the Chevy Corvair.
Corvair for 1965.
You see the Corvair front crossmember just bolted to the frame. You could unbolt the front crossmember and the whole assembly came out as a unit. So you unbolt this unit, you get the front crossmember, you get the independent front suspension, shocks, brakes, the whole 9 yards. Now you take that whole unit and you weld it up under your street rod and bam, you've got yourself independent front suspension in the early 70s or the late 60s. So that's what I found when I pulled all that goofy pinstripe tape off the front crossmember and did a little investigation. I figured out the Lady Luck coupe has a complete front clip out from under a 1965 Corvair. After 40 years in storage, the front wheel cylinders were shot, so I needed new ones. I was able to get those from California Corvair. Now the rear end's just a standard 1960s Chevy rear end, so those wheel cylinders were no problem. I could get those at Napa. Also, I got a brand new master cylinder from Napa. I painted the master cylinder black, just like the guy did in the 70s, and I also reused his lid that he probably sent off to his buddy with the chrome shop and had chromed in the 70s. Looks brand new. I ripped out all the old brake lines, ran brand new lines, brand new hoses. Now the whole brake system is 100% new. Time for a test drive. All right, that was just a short little test drive down our long country driveway, but the brakes felt pretty good. Let's take it for a real test drive out on the road. Well, that test drive went so well, I immediately loaded up the little woman and we headed to the nearest gas station. Let's fill it up. The last time this car was at a gas station, Johnny Paycheck was still having hit songs on the radio. All right, we're back at the shop, and the next order of business is to polish up this dingy aluminum. Let's roll up our sleeves and break out a can of Mother's and get busy. So after using up a half a can of Mother's polish and listening to Waylon's 16 greatest hits twice, this is what we ended up with. Whoever did the pinstriping on this car in the 1970s was an amazing artist. I absolutely love 99% of what they did, but there are a few places that I feel like just didn't need a pinstripe accent, so I want to get those off. Here's the safest way I've found to remove unwanted, painted-on pinstriping. Just use Easy Off oven cleaner. I don't spray it directly on the paint. I spray it on a Q-tip and then very gently apply it to the pinstriping. Now, it only takes a few minutes to start working. I let it dissolve the paint a little bit and then clean it off with some Windex and a soft cloth, see what you've got, and reapply. You can see the first application took off most of the pinstriping. The second application took it all off and didn't harm the paint underneath any whatsoever. Now that we've got rid of the unwanted pinstripes, I break out the cherry flash and give the whole car a real nice old-time wax job, by hand. The next thing that's bothering me is the front end height. This thing sets so high in the front, I'm afraid I'm going to get a nosebleed while I'm driving it. Got to do something about that. Now the question is, how do you lower the front end of a 1965 Corvair? Well, I do some research on the Corvair forums, and all the Corvair guys say you can cut off 1 to 2 coils on your coil springs and lower the car without losing any ride. So I cut off 2 coils, and that gets the front end nice and low, but the car rides like a steel wheel wagon. That's not going to work. Now, the Corvair had its engine in the rear and had a trunk in the front, so these springs are designed to hold up a trunk. But in this car, they're holding up a 289 Ford engine. I'm going to need new springs. Much stiffer. So I give up on internet forums, and I break out my big collection of 1970s Street Rodder magazines. After about 2 cups of coffee, sure enough, I find a how-to article. How to install Chevy Corvair front suspension in your street rod. The guy in the article said, use Chevy Vega V8 springs and cut 1 to 2 coils to get the ride height you want. I got a set on order from Rock Auto right away. Well, the V8 Vega springs did the trick. Got me out of the nosebleed section, got me down nice and low, rides and drives great. The next thing we have to talk about is wheels. Now this car has these Keystone Rogue wheels. I love the wheels, but it has 14s all the way around. Now 14-inch wheels just does not fill out the back fender well. Check out that gap. That's not going to work. Now for months I'd been posting on social media, posting on the ham, posting on forums, anywhere I could post, searching for someone who might have 2 of these Rogue wheels in 15-inch. I had no luck. So as much as I love those Keystone Rogue wheels, I'm going to have to make a change. So now the decision, what kind of wheel tire combo is it going to be? You remember back at the first of this video when I told you I really liked the look of white letter tires and wire spoke wheels on Tom McMullen's Roadster? Well, I just can't get that look out of my head. True spoke wires, preferably with white letter tires showing. That's the look. So I go on the hunt for a set of bigs and littles. 14s on the front, 15s on the back. So I go on a hunt for a set of real deal 45 spoke true spokes, made in America ones, not the new import ones. And I find this old ad on the ham. It's an ad that's like 3 years old, and I think there's no way this guy still has these wheels after 3 years. But then I think to myself, they're true spokes. Nobody's buying true spokes these days. He's probably still got them. So I send the guy a message. The guy says, yeah, he still has the wheels. They are original 1970s true spokes. As a matter of fact, they're date-coded 1976. Then he proceeds to tell me those are the 4 best true spoke wheels they made that week in 1976. I said, how would you know that? He said because he was an employee at the True Spoke factory in California in 1976. He picked out those four wheels himself. Anyway, the guy now lives in Knoxville, Tennessee, so I drove down and met him in an Advance Auto parking lot, looked at the wheels, got them bought. Then the guy gives me a whole hour's worth of stories about working in the True Spoke factory in the 1970s. I could write a book on True Spokes now. So I get these 1976 True Spokes back to the shop, and they're in really good condition. They're not dented up or dinged anywhere, but they do have some rust popping up here and there that's going to have to be addressed. Now my go-to for rusty chrome is Quick Glow. Quick Glow has pumice in it, and that pumice really takes the rust off quick. It also has a wax in it. The wax seals back over where the rust was and keeps the rust from coming back. I love this stuff. Now, I worked on these wheels long enough to listen to my favorite Hank Jr. album about 6 times, and this was the result. Now, I couldn't find an original set of 3-bar knockoffs from the 1970s, so I had to order a brand new set from True Spoke. So I'm still calling these wheels period correct. Those knockoffs were available in the 70s. The tires that came with these wheels were the correct sizes, but they were old and date-coded, and they were hard as Chinese arithmetic, so they had to go. I got a new set of radial TAs on the way. I always think of radial TAs as an 80s tire, but if you look back, they were available in the 70s, and lots of guys were running them on hot rods in the 70s too. The next project on the Lady Luck coupe was the wiring. This is how the wiring looked when we found the car. Everything worked, but there was no turn signal circuit whatsoever. We're going to need turn signals, so we decided just to rip all the wiring out of the car, retain the glass fuse holder, use it as a base, and start from scratch. This car had a steering column out of a late 60s Camaro, and luckily the turn signal harness and the plug were still intact. So we went online and found a pinout diagram for the plug, and we started there and created a turn signal circuit. So I rewired the whole car, and this is what it looks like under the dash. Notice I reused the glass fuses, so it's just like the 1970s. And guess what? Now we've got turn signals. With the new wiring, the headlights were nice and bright, but we felt like the brake lights and tail lights were a little dim. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Puddin' Creek, put LEDs in it. They'll be nice and bright. Well, we don't want LEDs. We're trying to keep this car period correct for the 1970s. So here's what we did. We painted the inside of the taillight housings flat white, not gloss white, flat white. We've tried several different paints over the years, and flat white works better than gloss white. It works better than silver. Flat white really brings them alive. The second thing we did is change the taillight bulbs from 1157s to 2357s. 2357s don't last quite as long, but they're much brighter. With a new wiring harness in place, let's take it for a little test drive and see how she's doing. Now every time I look out the windshield of this car, there's one thing that bothers me, that B&M air cleaner, the Princess Leia model. Now, I remember this air cleaner as more of a bad 80s accessory, but I pulled out some of my old hot rod magazines, and sure enough, B&M had these for sale in the 1970s. They were a bad 70s accessory also. I want to replace it with something a lot cooler, but whatever I replace it with has to be period correct for the 1970s. And I want something that not everybody else has. Flipping through the pages of an early 70s hot rod magazine, I come upon this ad from Cal Custom. Now I like this hood scoop. This is a winner. After about a month of searching, one finally pops up on eBay. Man, it's rough. And it wasn't cheap either, but it's the only one I can find. So I put my favorite Tony Rice album on the stereo, and I get busy sanding and then polishing. But now it's starting to look like something. It was missing the ring that goes between the air scoop and the carburetor, so I'll have to fab one of those up out of aluminum. Now I know the question that's been bothering you guys this whole video. Why is that 289 Ford engine painted Chevrolet orange? I have no idea, but we're going to fix it. I mixed up some paint, some gold with a lot of pearl in it, taped off the engine block and sprayed it right in the car. I also ordered up a new set of Offenhauser valve covers to match the Offenhauser tunnel ram intake. And yes, before you ask, those are period correct for the 1970s. They looked a little plain when I set them on the engine block, so I pulled them back off, taped them up, and gave them the gold treatment also. The valve covers came out so good that it inspired me to take every single aluminum part off the engine, spend hours and hours hand polishing it, and putting it all back on. The yellow Excel spark plug wires just weren't going to work with all this gold on the engine, so I found a new old stock roll of Packard brand black spark plug wire from the 1960s or 1970s, so I made up a whole new set of spark plug wires out of that. The guy that built Lady Luck in the 1970s installed a Walker brass tank radiator, which is great. Those are great radiators. But this one's very, very old, and it did have a few leaks. It would spray the windshield a little bit when you took it out for a test drive. So while I had it all apart, I took the radiator at the radiator shop and had it completely rebuilt, brought it back, hand sanded and hand polished the tank. Man, it looks great. Now with the radiator back on the car, I find out the radiator support rods won't clear the Cal Custom air scoop. So I fab up a custom stainless steel bracket that effectively makes the rods a little wider where they mount to the radiator. That worked great. Before the grill went back on, I hand polished it with Mother's wheel polish. Man, nothing shines like 1970s chrome. All right, giddy up. Here we go. Well, there you go, the story of the 1934 Ford Lady Luck Coupe. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure and subscribe so you don't miss our new videos.